Hello, and welcome to Book Reviews Kill, a podcast about fantasy, sci-fi, and horror novels. I'm Chad.
And I'm Evan.
And you are listening to our recap and discussion of The Wind Through the Keyhole, book 4.5 of the Dark Tower series by Stephen King.
Yes, it is book 4.5, but we are reading this after reading the entire series because I went on to the Dark Tower subreddit and thought I might be able to find a coherent answer on where to read this book, and there's just a total flame war in there about what to actually do. And the answer that I kind of settled on, that I saw a lot, was if it's your first time reading the series, save Wind Through the Keyhole for last, because the absolute punch in the stomach that is the last book, it's kind of nice to have the Wind Through the Keyhole to kind of revisit some of these characters.
Ease out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then on a reread, which I didn't do this time, obviously, because we're doing this together, but on a reread, it's recommended you read it where it's supposed to be, which is right after Wizard and Glass, after they leave the Emerald City thing and deal with the TikTok man and stuff, and they're on their way to Colibrin Sturgis. So I didn't really know that was exactly where this book was taking place, and I was so happy when I first started it to see Eddie, Jake, Oi, Susanna, and Roland just walking along, talking to each other. I loved it. I was so excited to see all of them again, and I'm so happy that I followed the advice of wait until you're finished with the whole series and then go back and be with those characters again, because, man, it was so great.
You nailed it. You led us through Evan, Lycum. That sounds nice. I like it.
Yeah, it does.
This was the perfect easing out of the story that I needed. It felt a little too abrupt, and yes, I would be and still will be thinking about this for the next few years, but it was a nice off ramp. And also, I'm glad I didn't read it during the story, because it would have just distracted me from the story, and I was in it at that point. So I think we nailed it. Now, I know this is the first time you've read it, so I'm really excited to ask you, for the first time ever of these books, how did you like this book, Evan?
I'm super happy to answer that question, and of course to ask you some of my own. So let's just get right into the recap.
Let's do it.
The story begins with the quartet just leaving the Emerald City. They are traveling towards Thunderclap and along the beam of the bear. As they get closer, they meet an old man named Bix, who seems to have a previous affiliation with Oi. Bix then warns them about an upcoming Stark blast and warns them to find shelter. He takes them on a raft across a river blocking their path. After they leave, they seek out shelter and find an abandoned town. There they explore the town hall and figure it's good enough for their needs. They then start to make preparations to get ready and wash off. Jake and Roland continue retrieving wood to make sure they have enough warmth so they can survive the storm, and Eddie and Susanna wash off as the Stark blast rolls in. Oi is stuck outside, and Jake barely grabs him before he is flung into the town hall by Roland. They decide to pass the time that Roland should tell a story, and he obliges. Shortly after killing his mother and the whole incident in Hambry, Roland has to go to Debaria with a fellow gunslinger, Jamie DeCurry. They are to stop a rampaging skin man. When they get to the town, they are disrespected by most of the citizens. They work with the sheriff to figure out some leads, but have none. Later that night, a farm is attacked by the skin man. Everyone is dead except for a young boy named Bill Streeter. Bill's father was killed by the skin man, who took the shape of a giant bear. They find tracks and figure out one important fact, that the skin man can ride a horse and that he is a miner. They then learn that he has a tattoo of a blue ring around his ankle. After this, Roland takes a young Bill with him to the town jail and calms him down and tells him a story called The Wind Through the Keyhole. The story starts with a boy named Tim Ross who suffers a tragedy when his father, Big Ross, is killed by a dragon. A few months later, his mother, Nell, marries his father's best friend, Big Kells, so they can pay the Covenant Man their yearly taxes. Things start going wrong when Big Kells begins to abuse Tim's mom. It starts to get worse until tax time comes, and the Covenant Man gives Tim a magical key that can open any lock. Tim opens Big Kells' chest and finds his father's axe and his father's lucky coin. Enraged, Tim goes to talk to the Covenant Man, who is in the Endless Forest. Once he gets there, the Covenant Man shows him the body of his father in a river and shows a vision of Big Kells beating his mother until she is blind. After this, Tim runs home and checks on his mother, who is aided by his teacher, Widow Smack. He vows revenge. Big Kells has disappeared and Tim wants to help his mother, so he seeks out the Covenant Man again, but finds only his wand. With the Covenant Man's wand and a pail of water, Tim is able to see himself, giving his mother an item which repairs her vision. The person that gave Tim the item in the vision is Merlin, a powerful wizard. Tim tells Widow Smack of his plans to find Merlin, and she warns him not to go, but gives him a rifle because she knows she cannot convince him otherwise. Tim then sets out into the endless forest to find Merlin. Along the way, he is tricked by a Sieg, who leads him onto an island where he's almost killed by a dragon. While being jeered on by the mudmen across the lake, Tim kills a monster with his rifle, and the mudmen then believe he is a gunslinger. They help him off the island and give him a device from the old people. Tim then uses the device to lead him toward Merlin. Along the way, he sees a dozen Billy Bumblers doing a dance that forewarns a Stark Blast. He rushes to his destination and finds a tiger with a key around its neck, locked in a cage. Tim then figures out he has to kill the tiger if he wants access to a place of shelter from the Stark Blast. Instead, he saves the tiger, and the tiger shows him a magic piece of cloth that grows and shields him from the Stark Blast. Tim also picks up a feather and a bottle. The tiger urges Tim to drip some of the liquid in the bottle into his mouth. After Tim does so, the tiger turns into Merlin. Merlin tells Tim to use the rest of the liquid on his mother's eyes and to give her his father's axe immediately after when he returns home. He is then flown home by the use of the feather and the cloth. Once home, he gives his mother the antidote and his father's axe. His mother is cured, and Tim goes downstairs to tell Widow Smack. He thinks that she is asleep, but discovers her with her throat slit. Tim is about to scream when Big Kells starts to choke him. Just as Tim thinks he's going to die, his mother cuts Kells' head open with the axe. After Roland finishes his story, they line up all the suspects. They take the ones with the blue ring on their ankle and take them into the jail. They then find out who the Skin Man was, but he turns into a giant snake and kills a few people before Roland puts a silver bullet in its head. This concludes Roland's story. After Roland's story, the quartet packs up and leaves their shelter with the Stark Blast blown over. They all think separately on Roland's story and continue towards Thunderclap. Okay, so that was awesome. I enjoyed this so much more than I thought I was going to. For some reason, Went Through the Keyhole always felt to me like this unnecessary, whatever, Dark Tower book that Stephen King just kind of wrote, and it's there, but it's. I was actually surprised when I bought my box set that it was included in it, because I just.
What did you think it was a story of?
I don't know. I thought it was just. I knew it was Roland telling a story, but I thought it had more to do with like him and Gilead, like. Now, I didn't think it was going to be this big, fantastical fairy tale adventure, parable thing that like...
Oh, parable. That's a good word for it.
If you didn't think you could get more explanation behind Roland's backstory, there's just more of it now. Like, more of why he feels the way he does. Like, it's one of the first gunslingers. Like, it's like a legendary gunslinger, too. Like, I love that part where Billy says, like, I'm going to be like Tim... What's his name? Stoutheart, Stoutheart, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
I'm gonna be like Tim Stoutheart, and even Jamie DeCurry is just like, all right, cool, yeah, I know what that is. Like this is everybody knows that guy's awesome. So it was just really nice to see more of Roland. It was cool to get a first person story from Roland. I was really happy to see that that's what it was going to be, because
Same.
Wizard and Glass is Roland telling the story about Susan Delgado and Magus and stuff, but it's all third person. So. That's great. It's fine. But having this, it felt just more intimate. Like I was actually sitting there listening to Roland tell the story.
Yeah, like around the crackling hearth.
With the wind gusting outside.
Yeah, and Roland loves the wind. I do too. It's just so good.
I had such a nice, vivid image in my head of, and by this time, I've spent so much time with Roland and Oy and Jake and Susanna that I could just see all of them sitting around this fire with the storm going outside. Such an awesome way to structure this book is... Like they have to run away from a storm. The Stark Blast is awesome. I love the way it's described with like the trees snapping like gunshots,
like imploding because they're freezing from the moisture inside. So cool.
And then they're all sitting around this campfire essentially, and Roland tells them a story. And then not only is he telling them a story, he tells another story inside of that story. Oh boy.
Oh man, I agree with everything you just said. It was so fresh. And parable's the right word. It starts as a parable, then the story within the story is a fairy tale that just fills in like some backstory. And I feel like that was the most fantasiest that this book's have been. You know, like there was dragons and a swamp and magic wands and a magic carpet ride.
A tiger that turns into a wizard.
Yeah. So cool.
Yeah, I was definitely I love that part where the mudmen come across the swamp and they have like this carcass of something and then they like hold it over the side of the boat and then this dragon claw just like creeps out and then it says like it sunk back in like silently. I love that.
But it comes
so
out
much.
just so silent.
Yeah, it's just like, thank you for this. I am the dragon of this swamp.
I will not kill you and eat your children now. And then the kid is like, Tim is like, well, I now know how to get past a dragon.
Yeah, there was nothing really in here that I took issue with at all, except for a second there I was kind of like, all right, I like this, but why does this have anything to do with the Dark Tower? I'm glad it's happening. Like, I'm glad that was kind of like my misgiving I was carrying through a little bit of the book. And then there's that really cool part where Merlin, like Billy asks, like, who turned you into a tiger? Like, what's this whole situation? Was it the man in black? Was it the Covenant man? And Merlin's just like, no, it wasn't that guy. No. That guy couldn't do that. But he
serves a far greater evil.
Yeah, but there is a Crimson King, though, you know, and so it was kind of nice to see that kind of tying together. And it's funny because the way that Roland kind of tells the story about Tim and the wind through the keyhole and everything, this is an old story. So the Crimson, it kind of like put the Crimson King into a little bit more perspective, you know, and the Man in Black for that matter as well. You know, like the Man in Black is like this kind of like consistent, constant evil presence that's serving the Crimson King. Roland just had a taste
prankster.
of him. Yeah,
hobbyist,
an employee.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like the Man in Black that we get to know and hate is not a prank. He's not just having fun. You know, he is very driven and he's very goal oriented. You know, where this guy is just like he has hobbies of tax collecting and
yeah, like he thinks that this kid is pretty intriguing, but also like pretty fine with him dying horribly too,
luring him into the forest and having him be killed. So the first thing that struck me when I started this book was the joy to which Stephen returned to his characters. How long was it between he finished the Dark Tower series and when he wrote this?
I'm not sure, like 4 years, I think. Okay. I think this came out in like 2011 or 2012.
Okay, that rings. It's hard for me to not talk in high speak. It's like I want to be like, that rings true, don't you?
You can talk in high. That's fine. It's 2012. Yeah, 2012. So 2012. Like 5 years after the Dark Tower, 7.
Well, I'm glad the Mayan calendar didn't mess that one up for us, because this world would be a darker place without this book.
Oh wow, no, it's 8 years out. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's 8 years between. So the Dark Tower 7 came out in 2004. I thought it came out in 2007.
There's like a clear, like, hello old friends that this book is like riddled with, and especially in those first like 20 pages, he really hits on all of their like character strengths like really hard. He's using that high speech like very thoroughly. You can tell he's just so glad to be back with his old quartet, and it had only been 2 days for me and I was glad to be back, but I kind of like, I felt the joy in the writing, and that was just, I don't know, made it all that much more special, you know.
I'd be so excited if he put something else out too, like maybe that part, there's like a little part where Eddie and Roland and Susanna are just traveling. They haven't gotten Jake yet, but they're still kind of, there's like a lot of days of just them traveling in the wastelands before they get to Jake and pull him back through. Something in there would be cool, but obviously we wouldn't have Jake and Oi, who are essential, you know.
Totally. But there's such like an old feeling to this world that Stephen King has created. Like everything is breaking and falling to pieces. And, you know, there's only one wizened old man waiting to take him across the river on a boat that's 90 feet by 90 feet, by the way. I was like, wow, that is a huge craft. Like, wow. But it just goes to show like the number of people that used to live in this area and the forces that it used to ferry across. You know, like if you look at everything from the right angle, it just serves this depth and this old ancient feeling that this world had. And I don't know how the old man survived the Stark blast.
I was gonna ask you, like, do you think he did? Because I liked Bix. I know, I don't think he did either.
Yeah, I think that was kind of his last mission to get him across.
I don't know. He's lived in that area for a while. Like maybe he's got the Stark blast on. You know, He's fine. Bix
Totally.
is fine.
Yeah.
He
Now,
probably
I
died.
will say, King, he writes a very fun, happy book, but he never fails to remind us that Susanna is pregnant. At one point, he brings her up, like, and it'll be not very long before she's crawling through the swamp eating frogs alive. You're like, okay, man, we get it. Can we just have a happy little corner here for a
No,
second?
absolutely not. Yeah, and then there's some pretty gross parts in here too, like that part where the Mudman, like his like a boil explodes on his chest, and then a spider crawls out, and then he like
Oh
flicks
my
the spider
gosh.
away, and then
Like
reaches in
nonchalantly.
and grabs eggs out of his chest and like
I'm
wipes them
always
up.
eating. I'm always
Ah,
eating, man.
jeez,
I
that
was
was
eating
so
burritos, which is like
gross.
kind of a sacky food, and it was just, oh man, it's always just so, so terrible. Okay, so I've got a few questions here. One, I want to know what you think about the technology that allowed the Skinwalker to actually change. Like, we never got into what is the mechanism besides like a watch that's allowing him to do these things. What's motivating him? Was it just like an ancient sigil of evil? What are your thoughts?
I wasn't super clear on that either.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it was left intentionally mysterious. I don't know. Yeah, I just
Because,
really
like,
don't know.
did this thing change that miner into being evil, or was he just like an a-hole old cuss to begin with?
If you remember, there was like a hole that they opened up because they had
Right.
found like a new
The
ore
green light.
deposit. Yeah, and then there was this green light, and then one of the other miners, like that older guy, was like, "I knew it was like you opened up, you were fucking around in there," and so it seems like one of the miners had kind of messed with whatever that was, like that green light in there. Um,
And they
maybe it
delved
was
too
one of
deep.
the maybe it was one of the like Merlin's rainbow orbs, like the green one.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, they mentioned that, or Roland does, that there's some like ancient artifacts. It's all spelled with like a Y or something, that could be unearthed. And I think that's kind of what it is. But I didn't know if there was some piece of lore that I was missing that was like, oh no, this was actually that thing.
I'm thinking it's like the green light was one of the spheres of Merlin's rainbow. I could be wrong about that, but it
Ooh,
sounds like something that makes sense to
that
me.
that sounds pretty legit. Yeah, I like that.
Like, maybe not, but
Why is the tax collector called the Covenant Man?
I'm not sure. I mean, like maybe paying taxes is a sort of covenant with the community
Like
or
fulfilling a
something.
promise.
I guess I don't know. I'm not really
Huh.
sure why he was called
And
that.
he is the man in black.
I think so. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't.
Okay.
I was kind of suspicious. Like I was kind of like I don't know if I thought it was Merlin at first,
Same.
um, which doesn't really. It's not super consistent with like gunslinger lore. So it was nice that it wasn't. And I was kind of like, is this the Man in Black? I don't know. But then Merlin pretty much confirms it. It's like the man with like the initials RF or something like that. I think he says something like that. And then saying like, oh yeah, that guy is not that big of a deal, but he serves a much greater evil. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure that's the Man in Black. Yeah.
Right. The evil to which he was prescribed by the like old healer woman who comes to help his mother. She was the one who kind of keyed me off to the fact that he was probably the Man in Black. So do you think that he was really just playing a prank on the kiddo and just was like, okay, little Sing, yeah, fairy malicious little fairy thing. Let's just play a trick on this kid and lure him out into the swamp for like no reason, just to kill him. Like,
All right. So there's probably something in the text that maybe I missed or something, but from as far as I could tell, he was intrigued with this kid. He saw some gumption in him, and like the kid has the makings of a gunslinger, and I think there's just something different about those kinds of kids. So he saw something in him. Maybe he did want the kid to die because he saw there was a gunslinger in this kid. Maybe this kid was going to be the one to get to the tower and deal with the Crimson King or something like that, right? Maybe he's always
stamp
supposed
him
to
out
be on
while
the
he's
look.
young.
Yeah, like maybe he's always supposed to be on the lookout for kids like this. But I think that the Sig, like the fairy, was him literally trying to get the kid to go into the swamp and die, like get killed by a dragon or some kind of monster or something. And then the Mudmen were not in like part of that plan, you know. So that's how I'm looking at it, at least. I don't know, like the Man in Black has got weird motives throughout the entire series. So
Yeah, like I said, in this, it seems like he's not so goal oriented. He's more of just like a hobbyist. Like he collects taxes for a hobby. He just kind of,
maybe
leads
he's like
kids off into
spying
the
on that
swamp.
whole. Maybe it's like the taxes are like a way for him to always be on the lookout for gunslingers or something, or always be on the lookout for someone that could be a threat to the Crimson King. Because like there are these kind of like communities that are at this point in time not necessarily thriving, but they're there, you know. And
Right.
um, you'd think that like the son of a man who like works with ironwood trees out in like a really dangerous forest, it's like maybe keep an eye on those people because they've got quite a bit of chutzpah, if you will.
Yes, yes. It's also a very good way to stay like trig with what community, what the happenings of the communities, right? Is like who has the money, like who's paying the most taxes. Like you can tell a lot about a community by who has the money, where's it coming from, who has more than they had last year, what happened. Kind of put some pieces together there.
Well, and also I think that this is a fairy tale first and foremost, at least the way that Roland's telling it. And so with fairy tales, with a lot of fairy tales, there's a whole lot of things that just kind of happen and think people are just in places and doing things, and it's not really focused on why they're there or what their like previous motives were or whatever. They're just there. So there's just like in
Mm-hmm.
Hansel and Gretel, it's like there's a witch in the forest, and it's not like, okay, well, where did that witch come from? She's just there, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so like, and
It's a
like,
good point, actually.
yeah,
Like, where
it's
did the
like,
witch come from? Like,
yeah,
nah.
exactly. You wouldn't need to know that stuff. So I
Well,
think
you
that
need to go read Witch in the High Tower,
Witch in the
Winter
High
Night.
Tower. Oh,
Winter Night. You
that.
need to read Winter Night. Yeah,
It's like, what the hell book is that?
it's like the second one, the only one that came to mind.
But that's funny because of the nature of fairy tales being so vague on a lot of details, especially like the really old ones like Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen and stuff. People have then, said, okay, well, what about this? And then written whole fairy tale retellings of that. So there's like, there's like that book Lost Boy that is kind of like from Captain Hook's perspective when he
Oh
was
yeah,
in the Lost Boys, and like Peter Pan's like kind of an asshole, so he leaves the Lost Boys. So that's like really cool. It's a cool idea. And there's been all kinds of different fairy tale retellings and things like that because of a lot of the gaps that are in those older fairy tales. So it made it feel that much more like a fairy tale, that things were just kind of happening, you know? I thought that
yeah.
Tim's dad was actually killed by a dragon. And I was like, is this kid going to have to kill a dragon? This is going to be awesome. But then I remembered like the tiger thing. And I was like, when does the tiger come into play though? Like, that's weird.
Hmm.
What did you think about like the skin changer having at one point changed into a tiger? Like, I don't know if that was because so the skin changer seems like it changed into like like a walking like alligator at one point. It was, I mean, I guess all alligators walk. I think it was like a bipedal alligator. I don't know.
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah, yeah.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
I mean, there's a difference between like I think they crawl. They always crawl.
Whatever.
They're crawling.
But then it's like a bear, and then there's like a snake version of it. There's a big cat version of it.
I was waiting for the turtle.
Evil turtle or hippo, because hippos
So
are
do you
really
think that
mean.
he? Oh yeah, dude, hippos like claim more lives than like any
Yeah.
other mammal.
Wow. What were you gonna ask?
Do you think that there was like a nod to each
I
one of the
don't
animals that he
know.
turns into was representing a beam animal, a beam protector?
I think maybe.
Is
But
there
I
an
don't.
alligator?
I don't think there's an alligator beam.
Okay.
Yeah. There's an elephant beam. This is pretty cool.
Okay.
It's a bat beam, and they were on
The
the beam
bat?
of the. Yeah, there's a bat and a
Oh,
rat.
really? Huh. Oh,
Um,
wow. Interesting.
but they in the story of in the wind through the keyhole. I think they're on the beam of the lion or like the big cat or whatever.
Yeah, they're on the beam of the tiger that goes through to the eagle. I think is on the other side.
I think it's lion to eagle, but the lion can be like just a big cat. But the lion's name is Aslan, which I thought was really interesting
Yeah.
too.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was yeah, totally.
It's funny though, because the bear for the bear beam, like the guardian, is named Shardik, and that's from a Richard Adams story. So it's funny that he
Oh.
did that. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, he gives like kind of like a little fan service to other people's stories. Sometimes
Yeah.
like he has Merlin mention, as someone said in a place like far from now, we're not in Kansas anymore, or no, there's no place like home, or he says
Yeah,
something
totally. Yeah,
too.
yeah. It's a nod to Wizard
Um,
of Oz.
yeah, which was really cool. I loved how at the end, like I feel like it was kind of similar to Akatar being like, and she's a fae who will live forever now. Problem solved. Being like, and here's a feather and a flying carpet, and you're home. Ba-ding.
Yep. Let's get
Did
you
you?
home immediately. Yeah, I don't know. That's
Yes,
fine with it. We need to wrap it
totally
up.
fine with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need him trudging through the blasted down forest. Seeing the whole like murdered tribe or imploded tribe. Yeah, that just would have been sad. Um, were you on to the axe thing immediately? Like when he was like stressing, like make sure you give her the axe
Oh yeah,
immediately. I
I
was
knew
like,
exactly
she's
what that
killing. Yep.
was. Yeah. It
Yeah.
really tied the story up pretty well, though. She got like her revenge, I guess you could say, for
Hmm.
being abused like that. It buttoned up pretty well. I was sad to see his teacher die. I liked her; she was cool.
Yeah.
Widow
Same.
Smack. I really like that conversation between Widow Smack and Tim, where Widow Smack is basically just like, "This is a really awful idea. Like you're probably gonna die," and Tim doesn't care, so she gives him the pistol and then or the four shot or whatever, and I love that little part at the very end of the little page break there where Tim says, "We send me on with a blessing," and then Widow Smack
Yeah.
says, "Nah, like I'm not going to do that." And then he leaves, and then she does it anyway. But he just
Hmm.
can't hear her. But I thought that was great. That was really nice. Okay, so I want to know your thoughts after I give you my thoughts about Merlin. I was a little disappointed with Merlin. Um, I just wanted more. I just wanted more of him.
Yeah.
Maybe that's kind of the mystique around Merlin because he kind of talked for it was like a kid meeting Santa Claus. It's just like how much Santa Claus can I get in this scene? I want
Yeah.
as much as possible. I want to know all the mysteries of the North Pole. Like, let's go. And Merlin was just kind of like, aha, you freed me. So
Right.
you've got the
And
makings
it's
of a gunslinger about you. So yeah, yep. Like, let's see ya. And
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just being nitpicky, but I just wanted like I could have used like 50 pages of Merlin, like them going on like another adventure together or something. Like I don't
Yeah,
know.
or him being freed for like a purpose that I was aware of because it kind of just seemed like he was like, I was tired of being a tiger anyway. Thanks. But it was like, are you doing anything?
He
Like,
like gave him the liquid that was like tied around the tiger's neck, right? And
right.
so like the tiger wouldn't have been able to get at it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I know that. I'm just saying,
Okay,
like,
yeah.
he didn't have anything to like, thank you for freeing me. I have to go rescue the princess now. Or like
Oh no,
Merlin
he was
wasn't
just
setting
hanging
off to
out.
do it. Yeah, he was
Yeah,
just
I
like,
see what
yeah,
you're
no,
saying.
I was tired of like licking
Like that
myself.
sucked. Yeah, that being a tiger was
Yeah.
lame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because at
Being a
that
tiger
point,
was lame.
Because at that point, he had already kind of like trained Arthur Eld, right? And so, like, what else is Merlin getting up to?
Yeah.
And like, why wasn't Merlin involved? Because he doesn't seem to like age super hard or anything. Like, I don't think he died really. So, like, why wasn't Merlin more involved with like the quartet and the Dark Tower and stuff?
Yeah.
I don't
I don't
know.
know. Maybe him dying was like one of the true things that really, really set the world on its downward
Maybe,
spiral.
yeah.
One of the things I
Magic left
also
the
thought
world.
was, sorry, go ahead.
It said magic left the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, he Merlin kind of marks in a lot of stories magic leaving the world. Like the time of the Fae is now over, because Merlin was like of the Fae. Um. Anyway, another thing that I thought was a little unmeaningful, not awesome, but just like could have been a little more, or maybe I just wanted more, was who the Skin Man was. He was just some like random miner number three.
Yeah, but I think that I totally hear what you're saying. I think that it was proportionate to the job that Roland and Jamie had. You know what I mean? Like it couldn't like
Okay.
they're still like really young gunslingers and they just had all this stuff go down in Magus and it was like it was something that Roland hadn't ever really brought up before. Like it's not like the Battle of Jericho Hill or this big giant story of him and Magus with Susan Delgado or something. It's kind of like a
Yeah.
side quest, like side
It was a
story
side
kind of.
quest.
It was a side quest, so it's like it kind of. I see what you mean that it felt like the if the Skinwalker had been someone of
The
more
sheriff.
consequence, yeah, like it would have been cooler. But at the same time, like it kind of makes sense for the mission that was set. Like even Stephen Deshane was like, "You guys can handle this." Like I don't. It was like the mission that Magus was supposed to be. Well, not
You're
really,
right.
actually. No, I'm wrong. Because Magus was supposed to be a place for them to just kind of go hang out for a little while,
To
right?
get
Like
away
they weren't
from
exactly. Yeah, they weren't
Cord.
supposed to. Yeah. Oh no, they were. It was to get away from Randall Flagg and just like the whole
Oh, that's right.
situation happening at Gilead. And Roland had just kind of like bested Court in order to like show that he was ready to take on Randall Flagg. At least that's how I looked at it. And then Stephen Deshane was basically like, "You guys got to get out of here because this is getting heated.
Right.
You
And
guys
you are
just
not ready.
you are not ready for this. Like, get out of here for a little while." And then they just happened to stumble in Magus into a situation that was way over their heads, but they prevailed anyway. But so it's not super similar. But then with this is like a side quest. This is like they're going out. They're just gonna take care of a skinwalker real quick. Oh, it was one of the miners. It was like a Scooby Doo
Right.
mystery. So, well,
It was like a Scooby Doo
was it
mystery,
though?
like a
I keep
like a
contradicting
really
myself.
grisly one.
Well, was it a Scooby Doo mystery? Because I feel like in Scooby Doo mysteries, it's always like it was the sheriff. Like
Oh
you
yeah,
had
yeah,
just
you're
said.
right.
So yeah, that's the second time I contradicted
It was like
myself
that
with
one
like
guy we've never met
two
before, but
sentences.
whatever. I mean, you weren't meaning that in that way. It was just like it didn't have any deeper meaning than what it was. And
Yeah, yeah,
also,
yeah.
I really love how the the concept of the gunslingers are so freaking awesome. Like they even call what they do going on quests. Like, I'm not ready for a quest yet, father. Like, they're just so role playy, and I love it so
Yeah,
much.
they're knights.
Yeah,
They're like
they're
literally
paladins.
sent out to go deal with stuff in the country. I loved it when Roland and Jamie met up with the sheriff, and Roland was kind of like going through the motions of what he needed to ask the sheriff in order for them to be able to do the thing that they were assigned to do. And the sheriff was just like, "Yar, yar, yar, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
guy,
yeah,
it's fun."
yeah, yeah.
I loved this the sheriff's story of how him and Stephen Deshane had been like kind of close and shared this experience together, and it really kind of like I don't know, I felt like really happy to hear about that. Like, oh, this is a little tiny adventure of Roland's dad, and Roland was really excited to hear it because he hadn't ever heard any stories about his dad.
It's like a kind of a messed up story though. His dad like sacrificing like these like 10 guys as bait. Like, what are you waiting for?
But
The
they wanted to
guns.
go. They wanted to
I
go.
know.
Like. But I love when Roland. I went not when Roland. When Steven gets into the cave and he says like, "All right, wake up! I don't want any of you to die while you're sleeping."
Yeah, he like
So
gives him a
badass.
fighting
It's
chance. Like,
so cool. Oh my god, it's so awesome. I want a Steven
I'd be
Deshane book.
so mad at you if we were in that situation. You're like, well, I didn't want to shoot them while they were sleeping. I was like, are you kidding me, Evan? We should have slit their throats while they were sleeping.
No, that's so honorable. So
It is
awesome.
so honorable.
All right, so this is kind of like my parting thing to say about this book. As much as I really liked it, I think I would have liked even more if this was a story about the Battle of Jericho Hill, that where Roland lost Cuthbert and Elen, because I didn't really care for Jamie DeCurry like at all. I
Right.
don't know why.
Nor do I now, even.
Like if there was one way that, in my opinion, this book would have really improved, is if it was Cuthbert. And I think that like there's multiple parts where Roland is glad that he brought Jamie, and I totally understand that. But I just, as for me, the reader, the constant reader, I really wish it had been Cuthbert or even Elen, because I had already spent time with them, and it
There's
just.
multiple times he wishes it was them too, though.
Oh yeah, that's true too. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Jamie just
I
didn't really
agree.
do it for me, and I just wish that it had been Cuthbert or Len, because I just know who they are and I know what their temperaments are like. And Jamie didn't really seem to have a temperament. Like he just kind of was there.
I
So
kept forgetting that he was young, even. I kept
yeah,
thinking he was an old man, this quiet old
interesting.
guy.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, like I've loved this. I thought it was awesome. It was a really fitting story for Roland to tell. The wind kind of reminded Roland of it. It seemed like he had been kind of thinking about it anyway. And so it was like a thing for him to get off his chest, and it was just really entertaining for the quartet, obviously, and for me, the reader. But I don't know, maybe I just want everything. I want all of Roland's backstory, and the battle at Jericho Hill is referenced so many times
So
over the
many
course
times.
of these books, and I want to see the whole thing play out, because in my head it's just very fuzzy, and I don't really
That's
know
what the
what
next book should
happened.
be.
That would be really cool. I don't know
Yeah,
where they put
we
it.
did get to learn that his mother forgave him, which was nice.
That was really nice. I'm glad you remembered that, because that was super important.
Yeah.
That was like the very, very last part of the book too, which I thought was sweet. And Roland, like, is he crying? Yeah, I don't know. It was great. It was
Yeah, and I
awesome.
like how he played with the note and unfolded it so many times until it became like dust in his hands and he
Ah,
just drifted away, just
all right, so you had one
so
last
good.
quote for this, you said?
Yes.
Cool.
So, as we come to a completion of our Dark Tower, I am sad but very ready to move on. This was the perfect off ramp. And the quote that I want to end with was, time was a face on the water, and like the great river before them, it did nothing but flow,
Ah,
as we shall as well.
but I wish time would stop,
I
and we could
know.
just read the Dark Tower a
I
hundred
think
times
we
over.
soaked in what we had in the time we had with the Dark
Yeah.
Tower. I think we soaked and got what out of it we could,
We got like
and man,
8
I'll never
hours
be
of
sad about it.
Yeah, we got a lot of content out of this and a lot of cool, awesome conversations that I would not have had without you. I mean,
Yeah, some chummy brain juice too.
oh, absolutely. I was so sad. I mean, like so I've got the Dark Tower series on my shelf, and every time I'm reading one, I obviously take it off the shelf, and there's a little gap, and the gap has been slowly moving to the right. But now that last gap has been filled, and the entire series is once again on my shelf. And
Yep.
I don't know. It was pretty sad putting the Wind Through the Keyhole all the way at the end there, and actually no, I put it in its rightful place
Me too.
between 4 and 5.
4.5.
That's where it's supposed
I
to be.
don't know where I'm even going to put mine because I've had it sitting in the pink chair behind me. It's kind of like the on deck spot.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't really have space, but it
You
like
gotta get a
deserves
new
a position
shelf.
of honor.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us, everybody. Thank you for following us on our Dark Tower journey. This might be the
Thank
first
you.
episode that you've listened to if you only read Wind Through the Keyhole as a standalone. But if that is the case, definitely go back and read all 7 of the Dark Tower books. They're incredible. Listen to the podcast we made about them because they're long and mostly
It's a cornerstone of
insightful.
fantasy.
Yeah, it's so brilliant. It's so incredible. And it's time to actually say goodbye to Roland and Jake and Eddie and Oi and Susanna and Father
Oi.
Callahan and John Cullum and weirdo Stephen King, kind of meta Stephen King guy,
Meta King.
and Meta King and everybody else. And damn. I
Yeah.
hate this. I hate it so much, but we're moving on. We're going to read a bunch of other really cool books.
Got some exciting things coming.
All right, let's go. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode and all of our previous Dark Tower episodes. This was a really nice just dessert after the giant meal that was the Dark Tower. And Chad, as we've always said on all these episodes, long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
Everybody, hope you have an awesome rest of your day. And of course, happy reading.
Bye, everybody.